Hey guys, tonight we step into the dusty, chaotic world of the California Gold Rush, a place where dreams glitter as bright as the tiny flecks of gold you're about to chase. You arrive with your boots sinking deep into the gritty, uneven streets of a booming mining town, where the air hangs heavy with the smells of sweat, wood smoke, animal dung, and a faint but persistent whiff of hope mixed with desperation. Around you, the sharp clang of pickaxes striking rock collides with the shouted bargains of merchants and the distant whistle of a steam engine chugging through the growing settlement. You can almost taste the tension and excitement hanging in the heat-hazed air. But here's a harsh reality check: you probably won't survive this. Not from a dramatic Wild West shootout or poisonous snake bite, but because this gold rush was as much a mental battle of endurance and willpower as it was a race for fortune. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off a rattling, wooden stagecoach, your boots instantly sinking into a mash of dry dirt mixed with patches of sticky mud and crushed gravel. The town around you has sprung up seemingly overnight, a sprawling patchwork of hastily erected wooden shacks, fluttering canvas tents, and muddy thoroughfares churned up by horse hooves and wagon wheels. The noise assaults your ears, miners shouting about claims and tools, horses neighing as they're loaded down with supplies, the occasional crash of a crate falling somewhere close by. The air smells like a strange stew of campfire smoke, fresh sweat, rotting refuse left by careless miners, and an underlying sharpness from gunpowder residue that lingers after a recent skirmish. All around, you see a swirl of humanity, rough men with sunburnt faces and unshaven chins, anxious eyes darting over ledgers and maps, women in dusty, faded dresses balancing trays of hardtack and coffee, immigrants speaking in strange accents and gesturing wildly, eager to stake their chance at gold. The streets are clogged with makeshift stalls selling everything from pans and picks to second-hand clothes and dubious medicinal tonics. The whole scene feels like a fever dream, chaotic, noisy, and filled with a raw energy that's equal parts hope and desperation. As you walk, a man with a wild beard and dirt-smudged clothes gestures loudly at a crumpled piece of paper. Claim for sale. Rich ground. Only $50, he shouts, his voice hoarse from overuse. Another miner nearby scoffs, muttering about claim jumpers and the lawless ways of the rush. You glance down the street and spot a group of men huddled around a makeshift blacksmith's forge, hammering tools red-hot in the firelight. Sparks fly like fireflies against the afternoon sun. The sheer noise, dust, and chaos are overwhelming. The dust hangs in the air, coating your clothes and skin with a gritty film that scratches against your teeth when you bite your lip. Your throat feels dry, and sweat beads on your forehead despite the dry air. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks incessantly, while a baby cries in a tent where a woman tries to soothe it with a rough lullaby. By 1850, the population of California had exploded from about 14,000 souls to over 100,000 in just a year, an astonishing tenfold increase that turned sleepy ports into frantic boomtowns overnight. This rapid influx brought all the usual headaches. Overcrowding, scarcity of fresh food and clean water, rampant disease, and a justice system that was more mob rule than law. You can't help but notice the constant tension, the thinly veiled suspicion in every glance. Everyone knows that today's friendly handshake might be tomorrow's claim dispute, or worse. Your stomach growls, reminding you that despite the noise and crowds, food is far from guaranteed. You spot a small stall where a woman sells hard, stale bread and weak coffee for a few cents. You buy a cup, savoring the warmth and bitterness, more comforting than you expected. Around you, the constant hum of frantic preparations continues, the clinking of metal pans, the steady packing of supplies, whispered rumors of rich claims upriver. You notice the mix of people, native-born Americans rubbing shoulders with Europeans, Asians, Latin Americans, and others, all drawn by the same fever. The cultural patchwork adds layers of complexity and conflict to this wild scene. Some speak openly of opportunity and brotherhood, others whisper of racism, tension, and uneasy alliances. The landscape around you is still mostly wild but already bears the scars of human greed and labor. Trees are felled, hillsides scarred, and streams muddied as prospectors dig, pan, and sluice. The promise of wealth hides a much grimmer reality: backbreaking work, unpredictable weather, and constant uncertainty. Still, the promise of a life transformed keeps many pushing forward. In this swirling chaos, some miners cling to strange beliefs to keep their nerves steady. For example, a bizarre local superstition says rubbing crocodile dung on your face protects you from sunburn. It sounds ridiculous, but superstition mixed with frontier hardships gave rise to all kinds of odd remedies and rituals. You chuckle to yourself, picturing a rough man with streaks of foul-smelling paste on his cheeks, hoping it's better than just a battered old hat. You begin to understand that this place is as much a mental battlefield as a physical one. The tension in the air is a mixture of fear, hope, greed, and exhaustion. Some men are already exhausted from days of travel, others jittery with excitement or desperation. You see men pacing back and forth, talking to themselves or nervously checking their tools and supplies. A few share shaky laughter, trying to lighten the mood before the hard work begins. Nearby, a group gathers around a rough wooden table where a man sells maps and claim documents, his eyes sharp and calculating. One of the miners hands over a wad of cash, securing what might be his ticket to fortune, or ruin. You overhear a debate about whether claims really belong to the first to find gold or the first to file paperwork. Historians still argue whether these early mining laws were more a practical solution or just a cover for chaos and claim jumping. As the sun climbs higher, the heat intensifies, and you feel sweat trickling down your back under your heavy pack. Dust swirls around your boots, rising in lazy spirals that catch the light like tiny golden sparks. You pause to wipe your brow and look around. Around you, the promise of fortune hangs thick, almost tangible, mixing with the grit and grime of human ambition. It's a heady, intoxicating atmosphere that fills your lungs and quickens your heartbeat. You think of the many who have come before you, some striking it rich, others swallowed by the unforgiving wilderness or crushed under the weight of disappointment. The gold rush isn't just about the shiny metal, it's a story of hope, madness, courage, and the will to endure. And as you take your first steps into this wild, uncertain world, you realize that the real journey is just beginning. The sun hasn't yet broken over the ridge, but the sky is already beginning to lighten, soft strokes of gray and purple bleeding into the indigo above. Around you, the camp stirs slowly, like an enormous creature waking from uneasy dreams. Somewhere, a fire cracks back to life with a few sharp pops, and the familiar clink of a tin kettle promises someone is already boiling coffee. You rub your eyes, stretch your arms, and step out of your canvas shelter, the cold morning air biting your cheeks like a warning. Today will be your first full day working the land. And your body already feels it. The camp itself is a strange, temporary village, more sprawling than organized, with tents and lean-tos crowding around each other like desperate whispers. Smoke hangs low, trapped between the trees, curling in lazy ribbons through pine trunks and over muddy ground. Most of the men here, your neighbors, in the loosest sense, are still half asleep, shoulders hunched, eyes dull. Some chew on jerky in silence, others spit tobacco and stare blankly at nothing in particular. Everyone's conserving energy, because everyone knows what lies ahead, a day of hard labor for the chance of finding something no bigger than a grain of rice. You gather your gear, a battered pan, dented but trusty, a shovel with a crack halfway down the handle, a canvas sack with some jerked meat, 2 biscuits, and a tin of cold beans, and your canteen, which you ration more carefully than food. Water is gold around here, sometimes more valuable than the real stuff. The walk to the river is quiet. The trail is narrow and winding, cutting through dry brush and low hills, with tree roots twisting like sleeping snakes across the path. You follow the sound of rushing water long before you see it. The river lies in a shallow canyon, flanked by smooth rocks and scrubby trees. Already, a few other miners are there, knee-deep in freezing water, hunched over pans, shaking and swirling, watching with near-hypnotic intensity. You find a small, unclaimed patch of shoreline and sink to your knees. You scoop the first panful of gravel and silt from the water's edge, your fingers stiff from cold. The motion becomes rhythmic: swirl, tilt, let the lighter sand slip over the edge. Swirl again. Watch what's left behind. Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. This is the job. This is the rhythm. This is the grind. The physical work is brutal in its repetition. Shoveling mud, crouching, standing, crouching again. Your knees ache, your lower back begins to throb, and the cold water turns your toes numb. The sun rises behind you, finally cresting the hills and casting a golden glow across the stream, making even the dullest rocks gleam with false promise. You remember overhearing a man in camp the night before, bragging that he pulled $12 worth of gold from this very stretch just last week. $12. That's a fortune here, more than some miners earn in a month. Maybe he was lying. Maybe he was trying to lure someone into wasting their time. Or maybe he really did strike it lucky. Either way, the story stuck in your head and pulled you to this bend in the river like a fish on a line. Around mid-morning, the man working a few yards upstream lets out a shout. You look up to see him holding something between his fingers, something tiny, glinting in the sun. He laughs, then shouts again, this time louder, a full-bellied cry that echoes down the banks. He's found gold. It's not much, but it doesn't take much to cause a stir. 3 or 4 miners abandon their spots and head toward him, eager to see, maybe to move in closer. Claim boundaries are respected in theory, but in practice, everything is fluid. Especially when gold is involved. You tighten your grip on your pan, suddenly aware of how quickly tension builds out here. A man might kill over less. You return to your task. Scoop. Swirl. Watch. Repeat. The hours pass slowly. Your stomach growls by late morning, so you tear into your dry biscuit and eat slowly, savoring even the blandness of it. You sip water, just enough to wet your tongue, then get back to work. Somewhere upstream, a man starts singing. His voice is raspy and off-key, but it fills the air with something other than silence and fatigue. Soon, another joins in, and then another. A crude version of "Oh." Susanna ripples down the river, turning work into something just shy of music. You hum along under your breath, not for the song but for the moment it gives, a reminder that, in this pitiless world, people are still people. The afternoon sun climbs high, and the air grows hot, pressing down like a weight. You strip off your outer shirt and tie it around your waist. The water feels good now, almost soothing, despite the film of sweat and dust on your skin. Your hands are filthy, your nails packed with grit. Your forearms are scratched raw from the stones. Still no gold. But that's normal. You remind yourself that most miners find nothing for days. Some never find anything. There are stories, always stories, of men who struck it rich on their first pan, but those are fairy tales. The reality is this: hours of labor for a few flakes, if you're lucky. Historians still argue whether the gold rush was a genuine meritocracy or simply a lottery with a pickaxe. Did hard work matter more than luck? Or did the richest men simply stumble into the right bend in the right stream at the right time? The truth, as usual, lies somewhere in between. But out here, with dirt on your face and sweat soaking your shirt, it's hard not to feel like you're at the mercy of blind chance. You think about the tools in your hands. The pan, the shovel, the tin spoon you use to scoop finer sediment. Each one has its quirks, its balance. You've already learned to spot good metal from junk. More than once, you've watched a man toss a broken shovel in disgust, cursing the merchant who sold it to him. Tools aren't just things here. They're survival. And yet, no matter how well equipped you are, nothing guarantees a payday. You could work for weeks and find nothing but granite and fool's gold. That's part of the madness of it. The randomness. It keeps you tethered to hope like a mule to a wagon. By late afternoon, you finally see it. A glint. Barely more than a speck. Your breath catches. You tilt the pan carefully, the sunlight catching on a tiny fleck resting in the corner. It's gold. You're first. It's not enough to buy lunch. But it's real. It's yours. It means you're not just digging in vain. Your hands tremble slightly as you tip the fleck into a small glass vial tucked into your vest. You stare at it for a long time. It's smaller than a sunflower seed, but it might as well be a crown jewel. Suddenly, you feel everything: hunger, exhaustion, thirst, the heat, the ache in your legs. But you also feel something else: momentum. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows through the trees, you pack your tools and begin the slow walk back to camp. Every step feels heavier now, not from fatigue, but from the weight of hope. The gold in your pocket isn't much, but it's proof that it can happen. That tomorrow might be better. That the next scoop, the next pan, the next bend in the river, might change everything. And for a miner in California, that tiny glimmer of maybe is all it takes to keep going. The next morning, you wake to the sound of boots thudding against packed dirt and the low groan of a man stretching his aching back. Camp life starts before sunrise, quiet and groggy at first, like a tired beast stirring from uneasy sleep. There's no such thing as sleeping in here. The river waits for no one, and gold doesn't reward the late. You sit up, the canvas of your tent rustling stiffly, and rub the sleep from your eyes with calloused fingers. Your back protests. Your arms feel like they've been twisted by a windmill overnight. But you know what's ahead: another day, just like the one before, maybe harder. You emerge into the early light, mist curling through the camp like smoke. It clings to boots and shovels, to shirt sleeves drying over branches, to tin pans leaning against fire pits. You catch the familiar scent of boiling coffee, burnt, bitter, perfect, and someone down the way frying bacon over a small flame. Your stomach growls in envy. You eat a strip of dried meat and half a stale biscuit and chase it with a splash of warm water from your canteen. It tastes of metal and moss. But it's enough. Today, you're headed further upriver, beyond where you panned yesterday. Word passed through camp last night, murmurs, mostly, half whispers and raised eyebrows, about a promising bend just past the grove. Soft soil, real color, one man said, lifting his pan and miming the scoop with a grin like a boy showing off a caught trout. You don't know if he's lying, trying to throw others off his scent, or just hopeful. But hope is what keeps you here. As you hike out, you carry more than tools. You carry weariness, doubt, hunger. But also, just faintly, that strange fire that flickers in the chest of every miner, a kind of defiant belief that today could be the day. That you might be the one to find something worth the pain. The path is overgrown and damp. Twigs snap beneath your boots. The underbrush tugs at your sleeves. You pass a rusted frying pan nailed to a tree, someone's marker, maybe, or a joke. Claim of Joe, someone scratched into the bark nearby. Joe is long gone. Or maybe he's still here, just quieter than the rest. You make a mental note: nothing out here is ever truly abandoned. You press on. Eventually, you reach the bend. The river here flows wider, slower. The banks are littered with fallen branches and silt-heavy gravel, the kind that weighs down your boots and sticks to your pant legs like wet cement. You pause, breathing in the cool, mineral-laced air. A few other miners are already here, heads down, hands moving. They don't look up. This is not a social gathering. You nod, quietly claim a stretch of shoreline, and unpack. The morning passes in a blur of movement, shoveling, panning, dumping, bending, rising, wiping your brow with a sleeve already soaked with sweat. The process is hypnotic. You start to feel time folding in on itself. Hours passing like minutes, or maybe the other way around. Your thoughts drift. You imagine what you'll do with the gold you haven't yet found: send money home, buy a real bed, open a tavern, leave this place for good. Then you snap back to the present. Your pan is empty again. Gold is a strange kind of addiction. It's invisible until it's not. It's worthless until it's yours. You've seen grown men throw their pans across the river in rage, curse the sky, tear up their camps in drunken despair. And you've seen them come back the next day, as if the land might forgive them overnight. Sometime before noon, you finally find something. It's not much, just a few flakes, almost too small to lift with your spoon, but they shimmer in the sunlight like crushed stars. You cradle your vial and drop them in, watching them settle beside yesterday's prize. The sound they make is almost nothing. But to you, it's thunder. You take a short break, sitting on a log and chewing slowly through a strip of jerky so tough it might as well be leather. Across the river, an older man works with the focus of a surgeon, every movement practiced and patient. His beard is white, his hands leathery, his eyes steady. He catches your glance and offers a nod. You nod back. No words are needed out here. Respect is silent. He reminds you of a story you heard last week, about an old prospector who wandered into the hills and never came back. Some say he struck it rich and vanished on purpose. Others say he died out there, buried beneath a landslide or lost to the elements. Historians still argue whether such tales are truth or just campfire legends passed down to scare greenhorns. Either way, they stick in your mind. And sometimes, especially in moments of quiet like this, they feel more real than anything else. After your break, you return to work. The sun climbs higher, beating down without mercy. Your shirt clings to your back, your breath comes heavier, and your arms begin to tremble from the effort. Still, you keep digging. Still, you keep panning. The flakes come slowly, irregularly, teasing you with possibility. You notice that your fingers are raw. The water stings the small cuts along your knuckles. Your boots are soaked through. Your back feels like it's been beaten with a club. And yet, you stay. Everyone stays. No one wants to be the fool who left 5 minutes before the strike. Late in the afternoon, you hit something solid, unusual. You dig carefully, uncovering a black stone crusted with gravel and clay. And then, nestled beside it, a nugget. Small, no bigger than a bean, but unmistakably gold. Smooth. Dense. Heavy. You lift it with trembling fingers. It glows in your hand like it's lit from within. This is your first real find. You stare at it for what feels like a full minute, turning it slowly in your hand, heart hammering. You feel a shout building in your throat but hold it in. You glance around. No one saw. You slide it quickly into your vial and close the lid tight. You've done it. At least, a little. The walk back to camp feels lighter. Even the heat seems less oppressive. Your legs still ache, your clothes are still stiff with grime, but something has shifted. You found gold. Not dust. Not flakes. Gold. At camp, you barely speak. You eat, stretch out on your blanket, and stare up at the darkening sky, where stars blink into existence one by one. The firelight flickers against canvas and beards and boots. Somewhere nearby, someone plays a harmonica, slow, meandering notes that float over the tents like smoke. You don't know what tomorrow holds. But tonight, the dream feels real. The fourth morning in the gold fields feels different, but not because the air is cooler, or the birds are louder, or the sky is any more forgiving. It feels different because your body has begun to accept the hardship. Your muscles are no longer sore in a way that demands complaint, they simply hum with quiet fatigue, like old wood groaning in the wind. You don't stretch so much as uncoil, and your thoughts no longer resist the rhythm of this life. You're not fresh anymore. You're not a visitor. You're a miner now. You rise before the light. The world is gray and still, the sky like a damp wool blanket pressed over everything. Inside your tent, the fabric is cold and stiff. You sit up, your breath visible in the early chill. Outside, the camp is hushed, just a few figures moving slowly, their boots crunching against the hard-packed ground, the soft thud of metal tools being gathered, and the distant whisper of the river calling everyone back to their place. You move through your morning by muscle memory. The flint and tinder spark without fuss. A meager flame grows beneath your blackened tin pot. You boil a weak brew, more bark than bean, bitter as regret, and chew slowly on a piece of yesterday's biscuit. It crumbles into dust in your mouth, but you welcome the rough texture. It's something solid, something to begin with. There's no conversation. No one wishes anyone else good luck. Words waste energy. The men around you all carry the same expression now, eyelids heavy, jaws set, shoulders hunched, not from fear or despair, but from knowing exactly what the day demands. You sling your tools over your shoulder, pan, shovel, battered canvas sack, and begin the slow walk back to the river. The path feels longer today. Your legs are strong, but each step seems heavier. Maybe it's because your pack carries more than tools now. It carries experience, disappointment, a growing respect for the land and its refusal to yield easily. The sun begins to stretch fingers of gold over the hills as you reach the bend where you've worked before. The light hits the river just so, making its surface ripple like silk over stone. You pause for a second, not out of awe, but calculation. The sun's position helps you see the silk better. You know how shadows hide clues. You stake out the spot you worked yesterday. It wasn't generous, but it gave, slowly, modestly, like a miser handing over pennies. Still, it was more than nothing. The flakes you found sit nestled in your vial now, barely covering the bottom, but they are your flakes. Earned. Extracted. Fought for. You begin the routine. Scoop, swirl, rinse. You watch the sand slip over the edge of your pan like gray silk, always alert for that one sparkle that refuses to float. The first few pans offer nothing. The clay here is thicker today, more stubborn, clinging to your fingers like paste. You curse under your breath, dig deeper, and keep going. Hours pass, measured only by the changing angle of light and the growing ache in your spine. Your stomach growls. Your hands are raw. You stop to drink, small sips from your dented canteen. The water is lukewarm, and it tastes faintly of rust and moss. You swish it between your teeth before swallowing. Your tongue feels thick. Everything tastes like metal and grit now. You break briefly to eat. A few mouthfuls of dried beans from a tin you kept warm beside the fire this morning. They're bland, but you force yourself to chew slowly, letting them soften against your teeth. You sit on a flat stone and look out across the river. A man on the far bank drops to his knees suddenly, scrabbling in the mud like he's lost something. You watch as he cups his hands and lifts them to the sky, mud running down his arms. You can't tell if it's joy or frustration. Maybe both. You remember a miner who passed through your camp 2 days ago, a wiry man with nervous eyes and an accent you couldn't place. He claimed to have pulled 2 full ounces from a hidden gulch upstream, but when someone asked him to show the gold, he just smiled and wandered off. Some say he was lying. Others say he was robbed. Still others say he simply lost it all at the card tables in Colombia. Historians still argue whether stories like his were common fabrications or the natural currency of a society built entirely on speculation and ambition. You return to your work. The soil here is darker now, damp and clumpy. That's promising. You move slower, more deliberately, fingers seeking tiny shifts in texture and weight. Finally, just before the sun hits its highest point, you see it. Not just a flake, but a sliver. A small, irregular chip of gold caught in the crease of your pan. It's duller than you'd imagined, but unmistakable. You hold your breath and lift it carefully with your spoon, deposit it into your vial, and give a small nod. You don't cheer. You don't grin. You simply move on. This is what you've learned: gold is not a reward. It's a reminder. A whisper that says, keep going. As the day wears on, the noise of the camp changes. More voices rise. Someone swears loudly as their pick breaks against a stone. Another man coughs, a deep, ragged sound that doesn't stop even after he walks away from the water's edge. A young miner nearby, he can't be more than 20, sits with his feet in the stream, head in his hands. You recognize the signs. He hasn't found anything. Maybe not in days. Maybe ever. You offer him no words. No advice. Just a glance. He won't listen anyway. Not yet. The sun begins to slide westward. Shadows stretch across the gravel like long fingers, and the air begins to cool. You work until the light starts to fade, until your shoulders tremble each time you lift your pan. Then, slowly, you pack up. Your hands ache. Your wrists are stiff. The soles of your boots are worn smooth. But your vial is heavier today. Heavier than yesterday. You begin the walk back. The forest is quiet now, the breeze soft, brushing through the pines with a sound like old cloth tearing gently. You pass a group of miners huddled around a fire, talking in low tones. One gestures with a knife, another nods slowly. You catch only fragments, something about a dispute upriver. A stolen claim. A warning. You keep walking. Back at camp, the evening is dim and orange. Fires crackle. Tin pots bubble. The smell of beans, tobacco, and sweat lingers like fog. You sit near your own pit, spooning out what's left of your stew from the night before. It tastes like ash and onions. You eat every bite. A man begins to sing, low, slow, a song about Kentucky hills and a woman he left behind. Another joins him, and for a moment, the camp is filled with the soft echo of voices that remember another life. You close your eyes and let the music wrap around you like a blanket. Your body aches. Your hands are bleeding. Your legs are trembling. But for a moment, there is peace. You lay back, eyes fixed on the stars beginning to prick the dark sky. The Big Dipper hangs heavy above the treetops. You wonder how many other men, lying on patches of cold ground across these hills, are watching it too. Wondering, hoping, aching just like you. You reach into your vest pocket and pull out the vial. You shake it gently, listen to the tiny clink of gold against glass. A sound softer than a whisper, but louder than a gunshot in your mind. It's not enough to leave. Not enough to send home. But it's a beginning. It means something. It means the river gave a little more today. It means you'll wake tomorrow with a reason to return. And that, out here, is everything. By the fifth morning, you no longer wake to the sound of others, you wake to silence, to instinct, to the steady pulse of the gold inside your head. The sun hasn't even cracked the horizon, yet your eyes are already open, staring at the faded canvas of your tent ceiling, breath curling in the chill air like smoke from a dying fire. Every inch of your body aches, from your neck down to your shins, but there's no hesitation. You've stopped waiting for motivation. Now, you simply rise. You sit up slowly, feeling the pull in your lower back, the stiffness in your joints. Your boots are crusted with old mud and lie just within reach, half buried in dust. You pull them on with a grunt, then stretch your legs out into the dim light of dawn breaking through a gap in the tent flap. The world outside is gray-blue and muffled. Camp is quieter this morning. A heavy fog drapes over everything like a wet sheet, clinging to the tents, to the trees, to the sagging clothesline stretched between stakes. Sounds are distant and soft, like they're coming from underwater. You step out into it. Your breath is the only clear thing in the haze. You stretch your shoulders, rotate your neck, hear the tiny cracks in your spine like distant twigs snapping in the woods. Already, you can feel the weight of the tools on your shoulders, even before you pick them up. At the fire pit, a man with a bandaged hand tries to strike flint with his good one. The sparks bounce uselessly. His eyes are red from smoke or maybe sleeplessness. You offer no help, no one does out here, but you nod to him, and he nods back. In the gold fields, that counts as kindness. You eat a dry crust of cornbread, dunked into lukewarm coffee that tastes more like river water than beans. Then you gather your tools, sling them across your shoulder with a practiced rhythm, and begin the walk down to the river. The fog makes everything quieter. The trees loom like ghosts as you move past them, each step muffled by the damp ground. The same path you've walked every day feels different now, like it's holding its breath. You don't speak. You don't think. You just keep walking. At the water's edge, the fog lifts just enough to reveal a stretch of gravel bar you've had your eye on for a few days. You've seen how the current moves around it, slow and heavy, curling back into itself. That's where the gold settles, they say. You drop your tools with a metallic thud, kneel beside the edge, and dig your fingers into the cold, wet dirt. Your hands are cracked and swollen now, fingertips split from days of sifting through silt and grit. Every time the icy water hits your knuckles, you wince, but you keep going. You pan, swirl, discard, dig again. The fog finally burns off as the sun climbs above the trees, and heat begins to creep back into the air. Around you, the camp stirs to life. More men arrive, voices low, eyes scanning the ground, their tools slung loosely over their backs. No one greets anyone. Conversation is rare, and when it happens, it's all whispers and side glances. Mid-morning, a commotion breaks out not far downstream. You glance up and see three men arguing over a claim boundary. Two are shouting, one with a shovel in hand, the other waving a slip of crumpled paper. A third stands between them, arms raised, trying to calm them down. You can't hear everything, but the tone is clear. Accusations. Threats. One man shoves another hard enough to send him stumbling into the river. There's a moment where you think fists, or worse, might fly, but then it fizzles out. They retreat to opposite ends of the bank, muttering. The man with the paper holds it like a weapon now, clutching it in front of his chest as if it grants divine protection. You return to your pan, more alert than before. It's a reminder. Gold doesn't just bring hope, it breeds tension. Suspicion. Even hatred. Historians still argue whether the mining camps had any true law at all, or if what passed for justice was just whichever group of miners could yell the loudest and carry the biggest shovels. Out here, the lines between law and threat are drawn in gravel, and they shift with the river. Around midday, the sun grows hot, burning through the mist and drying the earth in layers. Your shirt sticks to your back, your hat is stained with sweat, and the inside of your mouth tastes like iron. You work in silence, legs braced wide in the shallows, every motion automatic, scoop, rinse, swirl, discard. Your pan gleams dully in the light, the edge worn smooth by days of scraping against rock. And then it happens again. Not a flake this time. A nugget. Small, uneven, like a misshapen tooth. It settles in your pan as the other sediment swirls away. You freeze. For a moment, you don't move, just stare at it. Then, carefully, you pinch it between thumb and forefinger and feel its weight. Heavy for its size. Cold. Real. You drop it into your vial, and it clicks softly against the glass, joining the others. You exhale slowly. Your face breaks into a slow, tired smile. Not a grin, just the upward curve of someone who has been repaid, slightly, for patience. Lunch is a stale biscuit and a mouthful of dried apples you'd forgotten you had. You eat in silence, sitting on an overturned bucket while your feet soak in the water. The coolness is bliss. Your ankles are swollen. One toe is rubbed raw. You know you should be more worried about infection, but all you can think about is resting for 5 minutes longer. Nearby, a man hums a tune you don't recognize. He's bent over a pan, eyes glazed with focus, hands moving slow and steady. His beard is long, streaked with gray, and his sleeves are rolled up to the elbow. You wonder how long he's been here. A week? A month? A year? You wonder if he's found anything. Or if, like so many others, he's trapped in the idea that tomorrow is the day everything changes. You hear stories in camp, always secondhand, of men who struck it rich and vanished, of sudden wealth that disappeared in a single card game, or gold buried and lost forever. One tale in particular floats through your mind, about a man who supposedly found a nugget the size of a walnut, but when he returned to town to celebrate, he was found the next morning face down in a horse trough. No gold. No witnesses. Just a pocket turned inside out. The shadows grow long again. The sky fades from blue to orange, then to gray. You pack up slowly, letting your body adjust to standing again. Every part of you is tired, but not in the way it used to be. Now it's a steady hum. You've stopped noticing it. You make the walk back as you always do, one slow step after another. The camp is noisy again, men laughing too loudly over weak liquor, a group gathered around a fire trading stories about the day's haul. Some boast. Some lie. Some just stare into the flames. You eat cold stew from a tin. A man offers you a sip from a bottle of something strong. You take it. It burns all the way down but warms your chest. You thank him with a nod. As the stars begin to pierce the darkening sky, you lie back, hands behind your head, and listen to the sounds of the night. Frogs near the river. The distant howl of something wild. The wheeze of a man snoring in the tent beside yours. The gold is safe in your pouch, but your dreams are restless. This place, these days, they change you. The river carves not only through rock but through men. Bit by bit. Day by day. And though you came here to find gold, you're starting to understand, what you're really mining is yourself. The sixth morning feels like one long breath you forgot you were holding. You wake not with the startle of discomfort or the jolt of cold, but with a quiet, steady resignation. Your eyes open before your body moves, and for a long while you simply lie there, staring at the seams of your tent ceiling, tracing the stitch lines with your gaze. A soft drizzle taps on the canvas above, more rhythm than sound, more suggestion than storm. You feel the ache in your shoulders before you move. It's familiar now, your daily companion. You don't resent it anymore. You've made peace with pain. Outside, the world is dark and damp. Mud squelches underfoot as you step out. The camp is sluggish this morning. Fires sputter instead of crackle. Men speak less, move slower. The rain is light but steady, soaking through shirts, dripping off hat brims, gathering in puddles near tents. You cinch your coat tighter around your chest, the fabric heavy with moisture. The air smells of wet wood, sour canvas, and damp earth, and it clings to you in layers you can't peel off. You drink a hot cup of boiled river water with a few charred coffee grounds at the bottom. It's bitter, but warm, and that's enough. You chew on a piece of salted meat that's gone stiff and leathery in the cold. You barely taste it anymore. You're not eating for pleasure, you're eating to keep from fainting at the river. When you reach the bend, the water is high and faster than usual, clouded with runoff and silt. The banks are softer, the gravel slick, but you know the risks. The best time to pan is after the rain, when the floodwaters stir the bed, dislodge heavier debris, and maybe, just maybe, carry gold closer to the surface. That's the logic, anyway. Everyone has a theory. You're alone on this stretch. Most of the others avoid panning in the rain. Tools rust. Boots fill with water. Tempers flare. But you've started to enjoy the solitude. There's something pure about the sound of water rushing beside you, the way it muffles the shouting and the coughing from camp. Just you, your shovel, and your thoughts. You dig deeper than usual, your boots sinking into the mud, pants clinging to your thighs. Your shovel bites into the wet soil with a satisfying crunch. The pan fills with heavy, sticky earth. You swirl it, slowly, rhythmically, watching the lighter material drift off while the heavier grit clings to the bottom. You repeat the process, over and over, until the chill in your fingers fades into numbness. By midday, the rain has stopped, but the sky remains low and gray. Mist curls over the water like smoke. A few other miners wander downstream, eyeing your spot from a distance, but they don't approach. You've staked this ground with your sweat, and they know better. Your efforts yield a few flakes, small, scattered, barely worth the energy. But even the tiniest shimmer in your pan feels like a reward. You gather the dust carefully, add it to your vial. It glints faintly in the gray light, a subtle sparkle in an otherwise colorless day. Lunch is a soggy biscuit eaten under a pine tree while your shirt dries on a branch nearby. You wring it out every few minutes, watching droplets fall onto the forest floor. The trees creak in the damp wind. Somewhere deeper in the woods, you hear the distant whoop of a bird you can't name. You think about home again, though less vividly now. The images are fading. Letters are rare. The last one you received, weeks ago now, came from a cousin, not your mother, and was filled mostly with local gossip and the names of neighbors who've died. You tuck the thought away and return to the river. The afternoon passes in a slow, damp blur. You alternate between digging and resting, your movements measured and deliberate. You've learned that haste is your enemy. It breaks tools. It burns energy. It clouds your judgment. The best miners move like the river itself, steady, constant, relentless. A miner stops by in the late afternoon. He's new, younger, with a hopeful face and a busted boot. You recognize the look in his eyes, the belief that luck is right around the corner. He asks if you've heard of a vein found near French Hill. You shrug. You've heard a dozen stories today alone. Most are nothing. A few are traps. The rush breeds exaggeration, and the hills are littered with pits dug by dreamers chasing lies. Still, he smiles and thanks you, then trudges off, leaving muddy footprints behind. You watch him go, wondering how long he'll last. A week? A month? Will he be one of the few who stays long enough to lose hope in stages rather than all at once? You think about your own odds. Historians still debate how many miners ever truly struck it rich. Some say only a small fraction found more than they spent. Others argue it depended on how you defined wealth. Was it a handful of nuggets? Enough to buy a house? Enough to simply leave? No one agrees. But one thing is certain, most men left poorer, hungrier, and older than they arrived. The sky darkens earlier today. Thick clouds roll back in, and a fine mist returns with the wind. You pack your tools slowly, wiping them down with a rag you keep tucked into your belt. Rust is your enemy now, too. You pour a little water over your boots to wash off the worst of the muck, though they're long past saving. On your way back to camp, you pass the wreckage of an old wagon half buried in a gulch. Its wheels are cracked, spokes snapped. The canvas covering is torn and flapping like a flag. You imagine the family that brought it here, hopeful, perhaps smiling, maybe singing as they rolled into California. Now it's just bones. Back in camp, the firewood is too wet to light easily. You help another man break apart kindling with a hatchet. His hands are swollen, fingers wrapped in dirty bandages. He tells you he cut himself while shaving in the cold and hasn't been able to hold a pan since. You offer him a strip of jerky and a shared silence. Sometimes that's the most anyone can give. Dinner is thinner than usual, a watery stew with bits of turnip and something that might have once been pork. You eat it all. Around the fire, the mood is subdued. No songs tonight. Just the occasional cough, the clink of spoons on tin, and the quiet drip of rain off tent flaps. Someone mutters a superstition, that bad weather means gold is shifting beneath the earth, crawling closer to the surface. Others chuckle. But one man, old and half-blind, insists it's true. He claims he always found his best haul the day after a storm. You don't laugh. Part of you hopes he's right. Not because you believe it, but because sometimes hope is better than reason. You lie in your tent that night, damp blanket pulled to your chin, boots tucked under your knees to keep the rats out. The rain drums softly on the canvas again. Your eyelids grow heavy. You replay the day in your mind, the chill, the silence, the glint of gold, the boy with the broken boot. It blurs together into a gray, cold memory, softened by exhaustion. And yet, beneath it all, a quiet, stubborn ember burns. Tomorrow, you'll rise again. The river will still be there. The gold will still be hiding. And you'll keep digging, keep swirling, keep hoping. Because in this place, that's what survival means. The seventh day begins with the kind of silence that makes you think something's wrong. No wind. No birdsong. No distant clang of pans or murmuring voices in the dark. Just the sound of your own breath in your ears and the slow, steady thump of your heartbeat as you sit upright on your cot, blinking away the thin veil of sleep. For a brief, dizzy second, you wonder if the world ended while you were dreaming. But then you hear it, a slow, deliberate cough from the tent next to yours, followed by the soft rattle of someone stirring a dying fire. Life still hums, just beneath the surface. You rub your eyes with the backs of your hands, fingertips dry and cracked, and let your feet find the ground. Your boots are stiff with dried mud and cold as stone, and it takes effort not to groan as you pull them on. Every movement feels like a negotiation, between what your body wants and what the work demands. Outside, the sky is a flat slate gray, and the air hangs thick with moisture. There's no rain yet, but it's close. You can feel it in the way the clouds sag low over the trees, in the way the air smells faintly of iron and wet leaves. It's going to be one of those days, slow, heavy, the kind of weather that makes the tools feel twice as heavy and your legs feel like logs. You make your way through the camp, boots squelching in the soft earth, past the half-dead fire pits and half-asleep miners. A few men are already huddled over their breakfast, beans, biscuits, dried meat, all of it tasteless by now. You nod to a familiar face, and he nods back. That's the extent of conversation these days. Words have become a luxury you can't afford. They drain energy. They carry risk. Every sentence is one too many. At the riverbank, the water is calmer than it's been in days. The storm runoff has begun to subside, leaving behind fresh layers of sediment. You choose a spot you haven't tried before. A bend where the current curls back into itself, leaving behind a little eddy of stillness. It looks promising. You dig into the silt, and your hands vanish up to the wrist. It's soft. Rich. Heavy with possibility. Your pan fills with a thick, dark mud that clings to everything it touches. You swirl it slowly, the movement familiar now, meditative. Your shoulders ache, but you find rhythm. Scoop, rinse, swirl, glance. Repeat. You stop thinking in words. Your thoughts become images, memories, flashes of your former life, faces you haven't seen in months, meals you barely remember, the smell of soap and clean sheets, the sound of laughter from someone who isn't exhausted. You find a flake. Tiny, barely more than a glimmer. But it's gold, and it's yours. You add it to the vial hanging around your neck, where it joins the others, small victories, each one like a breath held too long. You keep going. The hours pass slowly. By midday, the clouds break just enough to let some weak sunlight filter through, and for a moment, the river glows. You pause to rest, squatting on a flat rock, feet aching, lower back tight. You eat a handful of walnuts and a dried apple slice from your pocket, chewing each one slowly, like it might be your last. A man you've never seen before appears at the edge of the trees. He's young, no more than 20, with a face that hasn't yet been hollowed by this place. He carries a shovel slung over one shoulder and a rolled-up map tucked under one arm. You watch as he scans the river, eyes darting from spot to spot like he's searching for some invisible sign. He catches your eye, gives a polite nod, then moves on. You wonder if you looked like that once, eager, clean, filled with something dangerously close to optimism. It feels like a different life now. A little while later, you find something odd. Buried in the mud, under a layer of tangled roots, your shovel hits wood. Not just any wood, something carved. You clear away the soil carefully and reveal a broken chest, weathered and warped by time. It's been buried a while. Inside, you find rusted tin cups, fragments of leather straps, a cracked bottle with cloudy glass. Nothing of value. Just someone else's history, unearthed and forgotten again. You wonder who it belonged to. A miner, surely. Maybe someone who vanished during the early days, lost to the hills, or to fever, or to a fall. Maybe someone who struck gold and never returned for his things. Maybe someone like you, years from now. Historians still argue about the number of people who simply disappeared during the gold rush. No records. No graves. Just missing names and empty camps. The Sierra Nevadas are littered with ghost stories. And maybe, just maybe, one or two are true. You dig deeper around the roots, just in case. Nothing. The soil is soft, loamy, easy to work, but it offers no treasure. You patch the earth back over the chest and move on. You've learned to respect the dead out here. Even if you don't know their names. In the late afternoon, a commotion breaks out upstream. Raised voices. Accusations. You can't make out the details, but you know the script. Someone crossed a claim boundary. Someone else retaliated. Threats were made. The usual drama. A few weeks ago, it might have rattled you. Now, it's just background noise, just another ripple in the chaos. Back at camp, the air feels heavier. Men are restless. One sits sharpening a knife with a faraway look in his eyes. Another drinks something sharp from a dark bottle and doesn't stop to breathe between swigs. A third paces the length of the clearing, muttering numbers under his breath like a prayer. You clean your tools, careful to dry each one before storing them under the flap of your tent. Your hands are numb by now, fingers stiff and slow. You flex them a few times, trying to bring the feeling back. You massage your wrists. You close your eyes. Dinner is more of the same, beans, onions, something that once resembled pork. You eat every bite, not because it tastes good, but because it's there. Someone says the cook is leaving soon, heading down to Sacramento to try his luck in town. You don't blame him. Everyone thinks of leaving. Few actually do. Later, someone plays a fiddle. The notes are uneven, the rhythm wobbly, but it's music, and it lifts the mood. A few men tap their feet. One hums along, off-key but earnest. For a moment, the firelight makes everyone look softer. Less haunted. You sit back, watching sparks drift up into the night sky. Above you, the stars are bright and sharp. The kind of stars you only see in places untouched by lamplight and cities. You trace the constellations with your finger, the names half forgotten but comforting. You think about time, how it slows out here. How one day stretches and folds into the next until you lose track of everything but the rhythm. Wake, dig, pan, eat, sleep. Repeat. But somewhere inside that cycle, you've changed. The silence feels less lonely. The work feels less cruel. The gold, when it comes, feels less like salvation and more like acknowledgement. A nod from the earth. A whisper that says, you're still here. And so, as the fire dies down and the fiddle fades, you crawl back into your tent. Your body is sore. Your eyelids heavy. But your soul, battered, bruised, and dust-covered, is still stubbornly pushing forward. You survived another day in gold country. Not by striking it rich. Not by besting your neighbors. But simply by staying. And out here, that might just be the greatest fortune of all. You wake before the light comes, not because of any noise or disruption, but because your body has started to obey the rhythms of the wilderness. Out here, time doesn't tick away in neat squares on a calendar. It stretches and bends like a winding trail through the woods, and sleep comes not when you're tired, but when the world allows it. You lie still for a moment inside your tent, watching the faintest pale glow gather at the edges of the canvas. The air is cool, almost crisp, carrying with it the soft scent of damp earth and dew-covered pine. A quiet wind stirs, rustling the branches overhead. It's the kind of silence that feels alive, thick with waiting, with things not yet begun. When you sit up, your bones protest. Your back twinges, your knees click, and your fingers ache from days of gripping metal and stone. You rub your wrists, flex your shoulders, take a deep breath. Another day. Another round of sweat, silt, and the slow, grinding hope that maybe, just maybe, today will change everything. Outside, the world is just beginning to stir. A few distant clinks of cookware. The low grumble of someone clearing their throat near the fire pit. You see the vague outlines of tents and shacks around you, shapes in the mist. The canvas is always damp at this hour, soft with condensation, and your boots are cold when you slide them on. They squish slightly from yesterday's river water, and you wrinkle your nose at the sour smell of mildew. You step outside, stretching your arms toward the gray sky. The mist hangs thick in the air, a pale veil that softens the trees and smooths the rough edges of the camp. You move slowly, almost reverently, gathering your tools, the pan, the shovel, your battered pick. They feel heavier today, or maybe you just feel smaller. The others are starting to move too. You nod at a familiar face. Caleb, the wiry man with the missing tooth who always mutters to himself when he works. He lifts a hand in greeting, then turns away, shoulders already hunched toward the riverbank. Breakfast is 2 biscuits, hard, nearly flavorless, and the last bit of jerky from your pouch. You chew it slowly, sitting on a flat rock, staring down the slope toward the bend in the river. That's your destination today. You scouted it yesterday afternoon, marked the spot with a line of stones that only you would recognize as intentional. It's a quiet patch where the water flows slower, and the silt collects in lazy drifts. It feels like a place that wants to be found. You start walking. The trail is rough, as always, twisted roots, loose stones, patches of slick mud that threaten to slide you into the underbrush. But you're used to this by now. Your feet know how to find their way without thought. The rhythm of your steps calms you. It's almost meditative. You follow the curve of the ridge, pass beneath a fallen tree, hop a shallow ditch, and then descend into the clearing where the river widens and slows. The air here feels different. Still, but not dead. Patient, maybe. You kneel near the water's edge, brush away the top layer of leaves and twigs, and start digging. The soil is dark and rich. It smells of roots and damp moss. You fill your pan, carry it to the water, and begin the motion you know by heart: swirl, tilt, let the lighter earth drift away. The work settles into your bones like a lullaby. The river murmurs. Birds call from the trees above. Somewhere across the water, a frog croaks a slow, hollow note. And there's you, breathing, focused, brushing your thumb across the base of the pan to catch that one shimmering fleck. You find your first flake an hour later. Small, thin, like a piece of brass dust. You smile despite yourself. It's not enough to mean anything, but it means something anyway. You drop it into the vial around your neck and keep going. By mid-morning, your arms are heavy. Your shirt clings to your back, damp with sweat. The sun is rising through the mist now, slicing the fog with long shafts of gold. The forest looks ethereal, as if you've stepped into some old myth. And maybe you have. The gold rush is, in its own way, a mythology, of heroes and fools, of promises and punishment. You wonder where you fall in that story. You take a break, sitting on a flat stone by the water's edge. You remove your hat, wipe your forehead, sip from your canteen. The water is warm and tastes of tin, but it eases the dryness in your throat. You gaze into the trees, letting your eyes go unfocused. You think of nothing, and everything. A sound pulls you back, footsteps, crunching leaves. You turn and see a young man, barely 20, with wide eyes and a nervous grip on his pick. He stops when he sees you and raises a hand. "Mind if I set up a little downstream?" he asks. You consider for a moment, then nod. "Just don't crowd the bend." He smiles, grateful. "Much obliged." He vanishes around the corner, and soon you hear the soft splash of his work joining yours. This is how it is now, people spreading, seeking, always hungry. There's an unspoken etiquette, but it's fragile. A man will keep to himself until he's desperate. Then everything changes. You get back to work. Pan after pan. Dirt under your nails. Clay in your sleeves. Your knees ache from kneeling on stone, and your palms sting where blisters have begun to peel. But you don't stop. By the time the sun hangs high overhead, your pouch is slightly heavier. Nothing miraculous, but a steady gain, 5 or 6 decent flakes, one almost as long as a fingernail. You sit again, this time longer, and chew the last of your jerky. A squirrel scampers through the branches above you. A fish breaks the surface of the water with a faint plop. And then, without warning, the sky shifts. A dark cloud crawls over the sun, and the breeze sharpens. You sniff the air, rain. Not heavy, not yet, but it's coming. You gather your tools, pack up quickly, and start back toward camp. Halfway up the trail, you hear voices raised in anger. You duck behind a tree and peer through the brush. 2 men stand near a pile of sacks, claim jumpers, maybe. One shouts, gesturing wildly. The other grips a shovel like a weapon. You watch from the shadows, heart pounding. But after a moment, one turns and walks away, leaving the other to mutter curses to the wind. You stay hidden until the path is clear, then continue on, faster now. You've seen fights before. They almost never end clean. The rush makes men strange, quieter than you'd expect, or louder than is safe. Back at camp, the storm breaks. Rain falls in long sheets, drumming against the tents and shacks. You sit beneath a makeshift tarp with a few others, sharing the shelter in silence. Someone passes around a bottle of something that burns your throat but warms your chest. You nod in thanks, wipe your mouth on your sleeve. Across from you, an old man named Eli tells a story about a prospector who buried a sack of nuggets somewhere near the old dry gulch and then vanished. Some say he died from snakebite. Others claim he joined a caravan east and never came back. Historians still argue whether the story has any truth, or whether it's just another campfire myth passed down to make the hardship easier to bear. You listen. Not because you believe it, but because stories are all you have on nights like this. As the rain slackens, the talk turns to home, places left behind, families half forgotten, memories faded like old photographs. One man speaks of a daughter born just before he left Missouri. Another of a brother lost in the mines of Nevada. You say nothing. Your memories are your own, and they feel too fragile to speak aloud. Eventually, the group thins. The fire burns lower. You rise and return to your tent. You light your lantern, inspect your day's findings by the flickering glow. The flakes catch the light like tiny stars. You count them, not for value, but for the comfort of certainty. Proof that today, something was gained. You lie down, listening to the last patter of rain on the canvas. Your muscles ache in that deep, satisfying way that comes from honest labor. Your mind is tired, but not heavy. You feel, for the first time in days, a quiet sort of peace. And in that darkness, as the camp drifts into uneasy sleep, you realize something simple and profound. Out here, it's not just about the gold. It's about enduring. About surviving the loneliness and the hunger and the fear. About standing on the edge of a wild, unforgiving world and saying, I'm still here. You close your eyes. The river hums in the distance. The wind moves through the trees like a whisper. Tomorrow, you'll rise and dig again. But tonight, you rest. The next morning, the world feels washed clean. The storm that passed through the night left everything glistening with beads of rain and the scent of wet pine needles hanging thick in the air. Your boots squish softly into the moist earth as you step outside your tent, your breath coming out in soft puffs. The sun is still shy behind a veil of mist, but there's a hush in the atmosphere, like the land itself is taking a breath. You stretch slowly, your joints cracking, your muscles stiff from yesterday's long hours bent over the pan. But there's no time to dwell on pain, not out here. A few more flakes in your pouch might be the difference between another week of rice and beans or the rare indulgence of a fresh egg or a single, bruised apple from the supply wagon that rolls through once every 10 days. Across the camp, smoke is curling from the cook fires. A few men murmur to each other, their eyes still crusted from sleep. You see two new faces. Strangers, young and wide-eyed, their boots too clean, their coats too tailored. They stand awkwardly near the general goods tent, unsure whether to ask questions or just imitate what they see. One of them is trying to tie a kerchief around his face to keep the dust out, but he's got it tangled. You consider helping him but decide to let the land teach him, like it taught you. Breakfast is quiet. A few spoonfuls of gritty porridge and black coffee so bitter it feels more like a punishment than a drink. Still, the warmth is welcome. You sit on a fallen log, your eyes scanning the treetops as the sun begins to push through the fog. Birds begin to chatter again, as if reassured that the storm has truly passed. Today, you plan to return to the bend in the river, to a deeper channel you noticed yesterday but hadn't yet tested. It's riskier, harder to reach, more prone to flooding, but sometimes the gold settles where the current moves slow and deep. As you pack your tools, you think about how much of this life is just gambling, really. Not the card table kind, but something slower and more patient. You gamble time, sweat, sanity. You make your way down the slope, the earth still slick from last night's rain. Roots jut like bones through the soil, and your boots find purchase only with effort. As you walk, you pass a pair of men arguing in hushed, angry tones over a claim. Their voices rise, fall, then rise again like waves. You don't linger. Disputes like that rarely end with handshakes. By the time you reach the riverbank, the morning sun has burned off much of the mist. The water flows lazily past, the surface shimmering with reflected light. You drop your pack beside a cluster of rocks and roll up your sleeves. The first few pans yield nothing but mud and disappointment. You keep your head down, hands moving in steady rhythm. Scoop, swirl, drain. The river gives up its secrets slowly, and often only to the most stubborn. You know this. You've accepted it. The key is to stop expecting reward, and instead make peace with the work. Around midday, your persistence pays off. At the bottom of your pan, sticking to the edge like it's trying to hide, is a curved flake, larger than any you've seen in weeks. You blink, then let out a slow exhale. You pick it up with your fingertips and feel the familiar tug in your chest, the mix of joy and relief, like finding a lost coin in an old coat pocket, except this coin could buy you dinner, maybe even a real bed for a night. You add it to your pouch, the sound it makes, faint, metallic, bringing a smile to your sun-chapped lips. You dig for hours. You try the deeper section of the bend. You scoop beneath a large, moss-covered rock, then farther downstream where the water runs darker. More flakes, small and shy. You catch yourself wondering whether the flakes are always there, and it's just your state of mind that determines whether you notice them. It's a strange thought, but not the strangest one you've had out here. Mid-afternoon, you take a break beneath a tree, its trunk split from lightning years ago. A hawk circles overhead, its cry sharp against the quiet. You think back to your second week in the camp, when you met a miner who swore by a superstition, burying a chicken bone near your site for good luck. He said it calmed the spirits underground. You laughed at the time, but these days, you're not so sure. Desperation has a funny way of making rituals feel like logic. Later, back in camp, you hear someone shouting. A group has gathered near the mess tent. You wander closer, catching fragments of conversation. Robbed him clean. Took everything, even his boots. Said he was sleeping and woke up cold. You spot the victim, a wiry man with sunken cheeks and hollow eyes, sitting on an overturned barrel, his hands trembling. His tent was ransacked in the night, and no one saw a thing. You watch the others shift uncomfortably, some offering sympathy, others shrugging with a kind of grim acceptance. Out here, theft is second only to starvation as the common killer. There's no sheriff. No real justice. Just the hope that when misfortune circles, it chooses someone else. You return to your tent, check your hiding spots. Your pouch, your tools, even your extra shirt, all still there. You exhale. That night, the camp feels uneasy. Fewer conversations. Less laughter. The usual card game near the fire is missing a few regulars. People eye each other more closely. Trust, already rare, feels even more brittle now. You sit alone, eating a stew that tastes like wet bark and ash. As the fire crackles and casts long shadows across the dirt, you think about how this place erodes people, not just their bodies, but their minds. The constant hunger, the suspicion, the isolation. It's not dramatic. It's slow. Like rust. Like rot. You see it in the hunched shoulders, the hollow stares, the twitchy fingers. And yet, you stay. Because sometimes, the river gives you a flake. Sometimes, a stranger tells you a story that makes you laugh. Sometimes, when the sky is clear and the wind is warm, you remember why you came. You remember that tiny voice that said, just one big strike. That whisper of transformation. That maybe. Historians still argue whether the gold rush was fueled more by actual wealth or by the illusion of it. Whether men came for gold or simply for escape. For a blank page. A chance to become someone else. You don't know the answer. But you know that for you, and for the others still sleeping in torn canvas and dreaming of rivers that gleam in the moonlight, it doesn't matter anymore. The dream is the reality now. The chase is the life. You head to your tent. The night is quiet, the stars thick above the trees. A light breeze moves through the camp, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and wet earth. You lie down slowly. The canvas above you is patched and stained, but it shelters you. You clutch your pouch lightly in one hand, as if the flakes inside could somehow anchor you to this moment, to the feeling of having something, even if it's not everything. Your eyes drift shut. And sleep, when it comes, is deep and dreamless. Tomorrow, the river will still be there. So will you. You wake up in the early sliver of dawn, the sky still more ash than blue, your breath rising in visible clouds inside your tent. Everything feels damp again, the canvas walls sticky with dew, your blanket cold to the touch, your shirt stiff from yesterday's sweat. Your back aches in the same spots it did yesterday, and the day before that. You roll slowly to your side and let your fingers find the leather pouch beneath your blanket, the one with yesterday's gold flakes. You don't even open it, just feel the familiar shape, the tiny weight of it. Still there. A quiet reassurance in an otherwise uncertain world. Outside, the camp begins to stir. Someone stokes a fire, the smell of wood smoke threads its way through the tent flaps. You hear the rasp of a man coughing hard and deep, the sound rattling like something is trying to escape his chest. Probably Tobias, the older fellow who sleeps 2 tents down. He's been coughing like that for a week, and everyone's quietly pretending they don't notice. There's not much you can do for sickness out here. Most men just sweat it out, or fade away. You get dressed slowly, pulling on stiff trousers and a shirt that still smells faintly of river water and burnt coffee. You lace up your boots, cracked at the heel, patched with twine. When you finally step outside, the air is sharp and smells of wet earth and ash. You stretch your arms overhead, joints popping, then scan the camp. It's busier this morning than usual. A small crowd has gathered near the supply tent. You see someone standing on a crate, waving their arms. You walk over, curious. Turns out a new shipment has arrived, a wagon from Sacramento with flour, nails, blankets, and, to the collective shock of everyone, a barrel of apples. Real apples. The red kind. Not dried slices, not sour scraps mixed into mush, but round, fresh fruit. The kind you haven't seen in months. A man is auctioning them off. One apple starts at 25 cents. It sells for 38. Another goes for 50. The bidding is loud, desperate, theatrical. Men cheer and groan. Someone even offers to trade 2 gold flakes and a wool scarf for 1 apple. It's madness. And yet, you feel the tug, too. Not for the fruit itself, but for what it means. Freshness. Home. Something that didn't come from a tin can or a moldy barrel. You shake your head, smile to yourself, and keep walking. The river calls. Today, you decide to try the North Fork. It's farther away, about an hour's hike through dense underbrush, but you overheard someone say they found color there last week. The problem is, everyone heard. You know there's a risk of too many bodies trampling over each other's claims. But maybe, if you head upstream far enough, you'll find a quiet bend untouched by boots and greed. The trail is rough. Not really a trail, actually. Just a suggestion in the trees. Your boots sink into soft earth, branches scratch at your arms. Birds scatter when you pass. Somewhere nearby, something crashes through the brush, a deer, probably, but you keep your pick close just in case. Out here, you learn quickly not to assume anything. Sometimes it's wildlife. Sometimes it's something wilder. By the time you reach the fork, your shirt clings to your back with sweat, and your mouth is dry as paper. But the view stops you cold. It's beautiful here. The trees part just enough to let in shafts of golden light that flicker across the river's surface. The water is slow and deep, curling gently around the rocks. Moss hangs from low branches. You hear no voices, no clanging, no shovels, just the rustle of leaves and the gentle lap of water against stone. You breathe in deeply, grateful. You choose a likely spot near a fallen log, drop your pack, and kneel. The soil here is darker, richer. You begin to dig, slowly and methodically. It's the same dance. Shovel, pan, swirl, inspect. The water is icy, and your fingers go numb after a while, but you keep going. And then, after 3 or 4 pans, you see it. A nugget. No flake, no dust, no shimmer. A nugget. Small, but unmistakable. About the size of your thumbnail, with that rich, unmistakable yellow glow. Your breath catches. You glance around, quickly, instinctively. Still alone. You pick it up gently, like it might vanish. It's heavier than it looks, smooth along one edge, jagged along the other. You drop it into your pouch and hear it clink softly against the others. A new sound. A new weight. You keep working. The sun rises higher, and the sweat pours faster. More flakes. One more tiny nugget, no bigger than a peppercorn. By noon, you've collected more in a day than you have in the last 2 weeks combined. You eat a quick lunch on a rock by the water, a lump of salt pork and some stale crackers, while your boots dry beside you. You watch the river curve and listen to the wind whisper through the trees. This is the kind of day that miners talk about in saloons. The kind that keeps you from giving up. You remember a story a man once told you, around a fire one night. About a miner who got so rich in one day he packed up and left before the sun set. Bought a hotel in San Francisco. Never looked back. But historians still argue whether stories like that ever really happened, or if they're just the campfire fables of tired, hungry men trying to hold on to hope. Either way, you're not going anywhere just yet. The hike back is slower. Your pack is heavier now, not just with gold, but with something more dangerous, optimism. You watch your step more carefully. You stick to the shade, avoid the thickest brush. You feel eyes in the trees, even though you know you're alone. Back in camp, people take notice. They glance at your boots, your hands, the way your shoulders sit straighter. Word spreads fast here. Too fast. You try to play it cool. Shrug. Scowl. Say the North Fork's nothing but clay. But already, you can see the questions forming in other men's eyes. Tomorrow, that peaceful bend will be crawling with strangers and picks. So tonight, you hide your tools better. You wrap your pouch in cloth and bury it beneath your sleeping roll. You make a note in your journal, hidden under your cot, marking the turn in the river and the tree with the twisted branch. You eat slowly. The stew is the same as always, gray, thin, but it tastes a little better tonight. Maybe it's your mood. Maybe it's the knowledge that, for once, you were in the right place at the right time. Later, someone strums a banjo by the fire. A woman hums a song you almost recognize, something old and soft, the kind of melody that wraps around your chest and squeezes. The stars are thick overhead, and the wind has settled. You sit alone for a while, watching the flames dance, listening to the slow chatter of your fellow miners. Some talk of wives back east. Others dream aloud of steamships and silver mines. A few argue about the price of flour. The usual noise. But tonight, you hear something under it all. A shared feeling. Something like patience. Something like faith. You lie in your cot, staring at the ceiling of your tent. The river still hums in your ears. The gold still presses lightly against your side. For now, this is enough. Tomorrow may be different. But tonight, you sleep with something in your pouch, and something in your heart. You don't wake so much as rise, not jarred by noise or jostled by cold, but gently summoned by that internal clock that now ticks in sync with the rhythm of the wild. The sun is already creeping across the flap of your tent, casting angular patterns on the worn canvas, golden light slicing across your pack and the worn soles of your boots. The camp hums in the distance, quiet, but not asleep. You know the sounds now, the scrape of iron pans, the low mutter of tired voices, the splash of water being hauled from the creek. Mornings here don't start so much as resume. Your back is sore. Not sharp pain, just that familiar dull throb of another day of bending, hauling, panning. You sit up slowly and feel the stiffness settle into your joints like old dust in floorboards. The scent of damp soil mingles with smoke from last night's fire, and something vaguely sweet, probably someone down the row brewing chicory root as a sorry excuse for coffee. You reach beneath your cot, feel around, and pull up the leather pouch. It's still there, thank heavens. Still heavy. You pour the contents gently into your hand, for good flakes, one modest nugget, and some powder so fine it glitters like crushed sunlight. You smile. It's not a fortune. But it's enough to make your blood hum. Outside, the camp looks different. More alert. Word got out, clearly, about the North Fork, about your find. You see at least a dozen men packing tools, adjusting straps, trading nervous glances. A few nod at you with cautious respect, but others look away too quickly, or hold your gaze a beat too long. It's the look of envy barely veiled by politeness. You've seen it before. You lace your boots tightly and step into the morning. You're not going back to the North Fork today. Too dangerous now, not because of the terrain, but because of the people. A crowded gold site can turn sour faster than milk in the sun. Instead, you decide to follow a rumor. One you overheard last night from a wiry, sunburned Irishman with breath that smelled like kerosene and teeth like a picket fence struck by lightning. He claimed he'd seen color near the Three Birch Crossing, wherever that is. He was vague, of course. Everyone is, when it comes to gold. But you remember a stretch upstream where the river braids into thin, rocky channels, and there were birch trees there, or something like them. Maybe it's a fool's errand, but out here, that's practically a job description. The hike is longer today. The trail's less traveled, more tangled. You push through low scrub, duck beneath crooked branches, hop stones across shallow runs of the river. The air is muggy, thick with gnats. A bead of sweat drips into your eye, and you mutter a curse that sounds like it's been marinating for days. About an hour in, you stumble upon it. 3 trees, pale, papery trunks, leaning slightly inward like they're conspiring. A few fire-blackened stumps dot the area, suggesting someone camped here long ago. The water is shallow and fast here, gurgling over polished stones. No sign of recent digging. No footprints. Just the low hum of insects and the distant cry of a bird overhead. You exhale slowly. Could be nothing. Could be everything. You start with a test pan. The soil is sandy, streaked with fine black grains, heavier minerals, the kind that sometimes travel with gold. That's promising. You swirl the pan, tilt it carefully, the way you've done 1,000 times before. The silt slides away, leaving behind a few glimmers. Flakes. Small, but real. You do another. Then another. It's steady, not rich, but consistent. Enough to make it worth your time. Hours pass. The sun climbs and bakes your shoulders. Your shirt sticks to your back. You find a rhythm, dig, pan, pour, repeat. Your mind wanders, sometimes to home, sometimes to nothing. It's like meditating, but with sore wrists and the constant risk of snakebite. By midday, you found a comfortable spot beneath a tree, your tools arranged in a neat arc around you. You sit and chew a biscuit that tastes like wood and regret. Your canteen is half full. Your pouch a little heavier. A breeze kicks up, fluttering leaves across the surface of the water. You think, suddenly, of the Chinese miners who arrived just a few years into the rush. Some came in groups, organized and methodical, far more disciplined than the usual solo American miner. They often worked claims others had abandoned, combing through tailings with quiet precision, and still managed to pull gold from the leftovers. It wasn't magic. It was persistence. Diligence. A refusal to give up where others had. You wonder where those miners are now. You haven't seen any in a while. There are rumors, always rumors, that some camps drove them off, that others were taxed unfairly, that violence did what law couldn't. Historians still argue whether the anti-Chinese sentiment was an inevitable consequence of competition, or a symptom of something uglier and deeper. But out here, history doesn't live in books, it lives in the shape of an empty tent, the silence where voices used to be. You dig again. More flakes. A small pebble that glints suspiciously, fool's gold, probably. But it's beautiful all the same. You tuck it into your pack anyway. Maybe for luck. By afternoon, the air grows thick with the promise of another storm. Clouds stack on the horizon, blue-gray and slow-moving. The wind picks up. Leaves scatter. You pack quickly, not because you fear rain, but because lightning near water is a game no miner wants to play. Back at camp, you spot the Irishman again. He's leaning against a wagon wheel, chewing tobacco and looking smug. You toss him a nod. He grins, tips an imaginary hat. "Find M," he rasps. You say nothing. Just smile, and keep walking. In your tent, you empty the pouch. More flakes than yesterday. Enough to matter. Not enough to leave. But you're starting to believe that day might come. You hide your gold beneath a flat rock at the back of your tent, cover it with a fold of canvas. Then you wash your hands in a bucket of rainwater, watching the grit swirl away. Your fingernails are cracked. Your palms are blistered. But you feel good. Honest, tired. Satisfied. Dinner is beans and sour bread. The stew's gone sour, someone mutters. You eat anyway. You always do. Later, a fire starts near the mess tent. Someone plays a fiddle, poorly, but with enthusiasm. A woman sings in Spanish, the melody lilting and strange. You sit with a few others and trade small stories, a bear spotted near the ridge, a miner who struck rich and was never seen again, someone who swears they saw a ghost near the graveyard. You offer no stories tonight. Just warmth. Just silence. As the stars rise, you look toward the trees and imagine the river bending, the water still churning with flakes that haven't yet been found. You lie down. The ache in your body is deeper now, but not heavier. Like muscle being reforged. The wind rustles the flap of your tent, and you smile in the dark. Tomorrow, you return to the 3 birches. Tomorrow, the gold will still be there. And so will you. The rain returns during the night, soft at first, just a whisper across your tent's canvas roof. But soon it swells into a steady downpour that wakes you like a voice at your ear. You lie there, still as stone, listening. The sound is soothing in a way, rhythmic, earthy, honest. But it's also a warning. Rain means mud. Rain means swollen rivers and waterlogged pans. Rain means the trails might vanish under runoff, and a careless step could send a man sliding into a gulch or worse. You sit up slowly, rubbing the sleep from your eyes. Your blanket's damp around the edges, and the floor of the tent has grown soft beneath your bedding. A puddle has formed near your footlocker, glinting in the dark. You mutter under your breath and move your pack to higher ground. Outside, the world is gray and dripping. Most of the camp is still quiet, the kind of quiet that comes not from sleep but from resignation. No one rushes into the rain unless they have to. You pull on your coat. A heavy oilskin that still leaks at the seams, and step out, boots squelching in the muck. The fire pit is a cold mess of ashes and wet logs. A few determined souls hover beneath tarp strung between trees, trying to boil coffee over sputtering flames. You join them, nodding silently. One of them offers you a tin cup, steam curling from the rim. You sip. It's weak, but warm. That's enough. You consider your options. Panning in weather like this is miserable, but not impossible. And fewer miners on the river might mean more room to work. Then again, flooding can erase a claim overnight, washing days of effort downstream. Still, the thought of lying in your tent all day gnaws at you. Idleness feels dangerous here. A creeping kind of rot. So you decide to go back to the 3 birches. You wrap your tools in oilcloth, cinch your coat tight, and head out. The trail is slippery, the leaves on the ground now treacherous underfoot. You take each step carefully, your boots sliding a bit before finding purchase. Water runs in thin rivulets down the hillside, carving new paths through the clay. Branches droop low with moisture, brushing your shoulders like ghostly hands. By the time you reach the birch grove, your trousers are soaked to the thigh, and your fingers sting from the cold. But the sight of the river stuns you into stillness. It's transformed. The gentle current is gone, replaced by a churning, brown ribbon of rage. The water slams against the rocks with such force it throws up mist, and logs bob like driftwood as they careen downstream. Your dig site. Gone. Submerged. the little rock shelf where you kept your tools. Underwater. You stand there for a long moment, staring. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just numb. That's how the land works here. No promises. No apologies. You turn back, deciding instead to scout higher ground. There's a ridge above the camp you've been meaning to explore, where the soil runs red with iron and quartz veining shows through the stone. Hard rock mining is harder work, no panning, no sluicing. It's picks and chisels and the slow grind of chipping or from stubborn walls. But if the gold's trapped in veins, it won't wash away like flakes in a flood. The hike is rough. The slope is steep, and every few steps your boots slip in the loose soil. The rain lessens as you climb, the trees thinning to scraggly brush and windswept pines. By the time you crest the ridge, your breath comes in short gasps, and your thighs burn like they've been whipped. But the view. The camp below looks like a smear of smoke and canvas, barely a suggestion against the vastness of the forest. The river glints angrily in the distance. Beyond it, mountains roll like sleeping giants, their heads wreathed in fog. You pick a promising outcrop, jagged and fractured, and begin to dig. It's different up here. No water to guide you. No soft soil to sift through. Just stone. Cold, unyielding, eternal. You swing your pick in steady arcs, sending chips flying. Your hands ache. Your arms grow heavy. But you keep going, driven by that deep, gnawing hope that somewhere inside this stubborn rock lies a flicker of gold. You spend hours there, hammering, chiseling, scraping. You find nothing. Not even a shimmer. But then, just before you give up, a sliver of something bright. Not gold. Silver. You blink, crouch closer, run your fingers along the edge of the vein. Could be pyrite. Could be real. Either way, it's something. A sign. A reason to keep trying. Back in camp, the rain starts again. The mess tent is more crowded tonight, everyone chased back by the storm, huddled around weak fires. The talk is subdued. One man claims a tree fell near his tent. Another says he saw a bear on the ridge. A young miner complains about losing his entire claim to the rising water. You listen quietly, chewing on a strip of jerky so tough it might as well be leather. Your hands are blistered, your back sore, but your mind is turning. Silver. It's not what you came for, but maybe it's what you needed. You remember a conversation from weeks ago with an old Mexican prospector named Esteban. He spoke of the Sierra Madre, of veins so rich you could smell the metal in the air. He said the real trick wasn't finding gold, but knowing when to shift your sights. Gold blinds you, he told you, poking a calloused finger at your chest. Silver whispers. You have to listen. You didn't understand then. Maybe you're starting to. Historians still debate whether most miners in the gold rush ever truly adapted, or if they simply chased the next rumor until their strength ran out. There's a fine line between perseverance and madness. Some crossed it without even noticing. That night, you return to your tent and light a small oil lamp. You sit cross-legged on the floor, rubbing salve into your hands. You open your pouch and study the gold again, beautiful, yes. But fleeting. So easily lost to a storm. So easily stolen. You think about the ridge. The silver glint. The quiet strength of stone. You feel something shift inside you. Not a decision. Not yet. But a stirring. A question you hadn't asked before: what if this journey isn't about gold? What if it's about learning where not to look? Outside, the storm groans against the trees. Inside, your breath is steady. Tomorrow, you'll go back to the ridge. Tomorrow, you'll dig again. And maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to understand what you've really been chasing all along. You don't wake to sound or sunlight this time, but to cold. A biting, creeping chill that snakes beneath your blanket and sinks its teeth into your spine. You sit up slowly, joints stiff, and breathe out a cloud of mist into the half-darkness of the tent. The rain stopped sometime in the night, but it left the earth soaked and steaming, the air thick with wet loam and decay. Your canvas tent walls glisten with condensation, each droplet trembling before sliding downward like slow tears. You rub your arms, brush dampness from your sleeves, and pull on your coat with hands that still ache from yesterday's work. Beneath your bedroll, the floor is muddy, and a small pool has gathered in one corner. You sigh, then chuckle softly. That's life out here, sleep with the sky, wake up wet. There's always something leaking. Outside, the camp is sluggish. Fires sputter. Some tents have collapsed in the night under the weight of the rain. A few men are cursing as they bail out their shelters with tin cups. But there's also a stillness, a hush that wasn't there before. The storm scrubbed the land clean, and for a moment, everything feels reset. You take a slow walk toward the edge of camp, boots squelching in the mud. As you pass, other miners give you a nod, or avoid your gaze entirely. You're not sure if it's suspicion, respect, or weariness. Maybe all three. Either way, your silence has earned you space. You head back up to the ridge. The climb is tougher today. The trail is slick, the ground loose. A few times you slip, catch yourself on roots or jagged stone. Your muscles complain, but they obey. You reach the crest breathless, damp with sweat despite the cold. The clouds overhead are broken now, slashes of gray revealing stretches of blue. The sun pokes through in reluctant patches, warming your shoulders just enough to feel alive. At the site where you saw the silver yesterday, the earth has shifted. The soil is darker, heavy with moisture. You kneel, brush away loose dirt, and find it again, that same glint, half buried beneath a slab of quartz. You chip at the edge of the rock, steady and methodical. The work is harder than panning, but quieter. There's something meditative about it. Each strike is like a heartbeat. You begin to feel the rhythm of the stone, the way it resists, the way it finally gives. Hours pass. You find more of the vein. Still small, still shallow, but undeniably there. During a break, you sit on a low boulder and chew a strip of smoked meat. The view sprawls out beneath you, endless pine and foggy ridgelines. The wind brushes your face like an old friend. For a moment, you forget about gold. You forget about sore joints and missing home and muddy boots. You just breathe. A flash of movement catches your eye, down below, a rider on horseback picking through the trees, heading toward camp. You can't make out who it is from here, but he's moving with purpose. And he's not alone. Two others follow, one pulling a pack mule heavy with crates. That's not normal supply weight. That looks like surveying gear. Maybe even weapons. You squint, feeling your stomach tighten. Back at camp, the news breaks quickly. A land company has arrived. Word spreads like wildfire. These men, sent from some San Francisco outfit, claim they've bought up half the valley in a rushed deal with the state. They carry papers, maps, and a sense of entitlement that rubs everyone the wrong way. One wears a bowler hat too clean for this place. Another carries a long rifle slung over his shoulder like an unspoken threat. They speak in clipped, polished tones. They say words like leasing, trespass, and eviction. By nightfall, the camp is divided. Some miners don't care. They're tired, ready to go home, ready to take what gold they have and run. Others are furious, swearing, yelling, throwing bottles. A meeting is called near the fire pit. About 30 men gather, wet coats steaming, faces lit by flickering firelight. You stand among them, silent, listening. "We were here first," someone shouts. "We bled for this land." Papers say different, another murmurs bitterly. A man named Harland, broad-shouldered, usually calm, spits into the dirt. Paper won't dig a mine. Paper won't hold a pickaxe. The group murmurs in agreement. But underneath it all is fear. No one knows what the law will say. No one knows if these suits can back their claims with muscle. And no one wants to be the first to test them. Historians still argue whether these land companies were legal overlords or opportunistic vultures. Some say they brought order to the chaos. Others insist they strangled the independence that defined the rush. All you know is they came with signatures and sheriffs, not shovels. That night, your tent feels smaller than usual. You keep your gold pouch under your coat. You sleep lightly, ears tuned to every snap of a twig, every cough or footstep. When you finally drift off, your dreams are restless, filled with shadowy figures holding maps and torches, calling your name in voices you don't recognize. In the morning, you wake before the sun. You don't bother with breakfast. You pack your things quickly, tools, pouch, a few supplies, and head to the ridge. Not to mine. Not today. You just need to think. At the top, you sit with your back against a pine and watch the mist rise off the trees. The silver vein glints faintly beside you, half hidden in the rock. You think about choices. You could stay and fight. Join Harland and the others. Dig defiantly until someone drags you away. But that means tension. That means trouble. Or you could move. Walk 2 ridges west, start over. It's what many did when the rush began, when towns grew too crowded or claims too contested. The land is wide, and gold has a way of hiding where people don't think to look. Then again, there's something to be said for standing your ground. You weigh the pouch in your hand. Not heavy, not light. Just enough. You remember the Chinese miners. The ones who worked discarded sites and still found treasure. The ones who didn't argue. They adapted. They endured. They stayed silent and kept digging. You breathe deep, feeling the wind in your chest. Maybe you don't need to choose today. Maybe surviving the gold rush isn't about winning, or owning, or even striking it rich. Maybe it's just about staying one day ahead of everything trying to push you out. You rise, stretch your sore back, and begin the walk back down to camp. And as you descend, the sun breaks through the clouds, just for a moment, washing the valley in gold. But this gold doesn't weigh anything. It's not in your pan or your pouch. It's in the light. It's in the silence. It's in the fact that, for one more day, you're still here. The morning breaks with a cold, restless air that clings to your skin like a damp cloak. You wake before dawn, your body tense from the previous day's worries. The camp feels uneasy, as if everyone is holding their breath waiting for something to happen. Outside your tent flap, the ground is a sticky mud mess, churned by heavy boots and wagons that refuse to stop moving, no matter how deep the muck gets. Each step you take sucks a little at your boots, the wet earth refusing to let go easily. You pull on your wet coat, its edges stiff with dried dirt, and step out. The sky is a grim shade of gray, heavy with clouds that threaten another downpour. The camp is already stirring, but there's no typical morning banter or easy smiles. Instead, you hear low, urgent whispers, the shuffle of men gathering in tight groups, their faces drawn tight with tension. You catch glimpses of furrowed brows, eyes darting nervously over maps, fingers gripping rifles a little too tightly. Near the mess tent, the land company's men have gathered in a small cluster, their clean clothes and sharp hats standing in stark contrast to the rough, mud-streaked miners around them. Their eyes scan the camp like predators marking territory. You notice one of them adjusting his cufflinks with a deliberate calm that only serves to make his surroundings look all the more ragged. The tension between the two groups is thick, almost electric, and it buzzes in your chest like a warning. You move carefully through the throng, nodding curtly to a few familiar faces, Harland, the broad-shouldered miner with a voice like gravel, and Esteban, the wiry Mexican prospector whose eyes seem to miss nothing. They're deep in conversation, voices low but intense. You catch snippets, legal rights, contracts, eviction notices, claim ownership. The words swirl around you like dust kicked up by a stampede, heavy and unavoidable. You want to look away, but you can't. The weight of it settles on your shoulders like the soaked mud on your boots. Your hands instinctively flex as you think about your tools, your pouch of gold flakes tucked safely beneath your coat, and the stubborn silver vein you found on the ridge. None of it feels secure anymore. The land you've clawed your way to survive on feels as precarious as a sandcastle facing a rising tide. At the center of the camp, a battered wooden shack serves as a makeshift courthouse. You can hear raised voices, heated arguments spilling through the open door. A crowd is gathering. Some miners shout slogans of defiance, while others argue in more hushed tones about what legal options might still exist. You can feel the divide. Some want to fight tooth and nail, others are already thinking of retreat. You stand at the edge, observing. Your stomach knots as a well-dressed man, clearly one of the land company's representatives, steps forward. His voice is calm but sharp, carrying authority that seems to cut through the noise like a knife. "We have the deeds. The contracts are valid," he says, eyes cold and calculating. "This land is no longer public domain. These claims are now under company control." An older miner spits into the dirt, eyes blazing. "That paper don't mean a thing out here. We've been working these grounds before your fancy contracts even existed." Voices rise in a chaotic chorus, anger, fear, defiance mixing in a rough symphony. The raw, desperate energy fills the air like an approaching storm. You watch as a small group forms behind Harland. His voice rises, steady and strong, rallying the miners. "We didn't come all this way to be run off by suits and guns. This land is ours, by right and by blood." There's a murmur of agreement, fists banging on wooden barrels and tables. You feel your own fists clench involuntarily. Part of you wants to stand and shout with them. But part of you wonders how many will end the day bruised or worse. But the land company men aren't unarmed. Rough-looking guards with rifles stand near the shack, their fingers twitching near triggers, eyes scanning the crowd with suspicion. You catch a flash of a rifle barrel gleaming in the dull light. You feel the tension tighten, a taut wire stretched thin and ready to snap. You think back to the stories of the vigilance committees, groups of miners who took the law into their own hands during times when official justice was absent or corrupt. Some say they were necessary, keeping order in a wild land. Others claim they ruled with terror, meting out punishments with little fairness. Historians still argue whether they were protectors or oppressors. But now, in this camp filled with uncertainty, their legacy feels painfully real. A sudden shout breaks through the clamor. A man bursts out of the courthouse shack, waving a crumpled piece of paper. Legal injunction. Orders to vacate certain claims within 48 hours. The camp erupts into chaos. Some miners curse and shout back, others shout for calm, but the mood darkens. You see fists clenched, faces pale but set with grim determination. There's shouting, bargaining, accusations flung like stones. You feel a hand on your shoulder. It's Tom, the young miner you met a few days ago. His eyes are wide, his voice urgent. "We can't let them push us out. We have to fight." You nod, though doubt gnaws at your resolve. Fighting means risk. There are guns now. There's law and money on the other side. And you have only your grit and worn tools. Throughout the day, the camp is a hive of anxious activity. Men gather to plan, weapons are checked, and alliances formed. Others talk quietly of leaving, of starting anew somewhere far from this land and its new masters. Children are kept close to tents. Women watch worriedly, clutching their shawls tighter. You find yourself wandering to the ridge once more, seeking a moment of quiet. The silver vein glints faintly in the afternoon sun, a fragile promise amidst the turmoil. You run your fingers over the cool stone, feeling the solidity beneath the uncertainty. At the edge of the ridge, you meet Esteban. His eyes hold years of hardship and a fierce wisdom. The land is changing, he says quietly, but the earth holds on. We just have to find where it hides. You share a tired smile. Hope, even small, is a precious thing. As evening falls, the camp settles into a wary quiet. Fires burn low, casting long shadows on faces etched with fatigue and worry. You sit beside your tent, tracing the outline of your gold pouch, the familiar weight of bittersweet comfort. The night is heavy, filled with restless dreams. You see visions of maps burned to ash, claims erased with ink and steel, and figures disappearing into the dark. Yet beneath it all, a stubborn flame refuses to die. Tomorrow will bring its own battles, its own tests. But for now, you close your eyes, and in the quiet, find a moment's peace. You survive. The dawn breaks reluctantly over the rugged encampment, a muted gray light that seeps slowly through the cracks of your tent like a soft sigh, barely stirring the heavy air. You awaken with the familiar ache of muscles stiffened by unyielding labor and restless, troubled sleep, but what presses on you most is the invisible weight clinging to your chest, a quiet but persistent heaviness born of uncertainty, fear, hope, and something stubborn that refuses to be extinguished. Outside, the world is a muted watercolor of dripping leaves and churned earth. The rain from last night still lingers, turning the dusty ground into a soggy quilt of mud and puddles that cling to your worn boots with every step. The air is cool and dense with the mingled scents of wet wood smoke curling lazily from low fires, the sharp, acrid tang of sweat and dirt, and the faint metallic hint of the silver veins nestled deep within the rocks around you. Your breath drifts in small, pale clouds as you step carefully over uneven ground, boots sinking and squelching softly in the mud. Around you, the camp is stirring quietly, men in tattered coats shuffle to stoke fires and prepare meager breakfasts, women coax children from their restless sleep with low lullabies, and the occasional bark of a dog cuts through the stillness. Voices are hushed, conversation sparse, each word spoken with cautious deliberation, like wary animals sniffing for signs of danger. The land company's guards patrol the perimeter, their boots clicking sharply against wooden planks and stone, the crispness of their uniforms an alien contrast to the earth-stained, weary faces of the miners. They exchange glances with each other, vigilant and silent sentinels of a power whose weight presses down on every inch of this land. You watch one of them adjust his wide-brimmed hat, the edges slick with rain, eyes cold and calculating as they sweep across the encampment. You make your way toward the gathering place, a roughly cleared stretch near the swollen creek, where a growing crowd of miners has already begun to assemble. Their faces are grim, etched with lines of exhaustion, determination, and quiet desperation. They speak in low tones, hands gesturing emphatically, voices rising and falling in heated whispers about claims, contracts, and the uncertain future that looms like a storm cloud. At the center stands Harland, his broad shoulders hunched under the weight of leadership and weariness. His voice rises above the murmurs, calm but resolute. "We didn't come all this way to be driven off," he declares, eyes locking with those of every man and woman around him. "This land belongs to us, to the blood and sweat we've poured into it. Let them bring their laws and their threats. We stand together, and we fight." The crowd erupts into a fierce roar, a primal sound of unity and defiance that shakes the very air and settles deep in your bones. For a fleeting moment, hope burns bright amid the shadowed fears and tired faces. You feel a surge of pride, a flicker of courage that pushes back the gnawing doubt that's haunted you since arrival. But as the voices swell, you notice the cracks, the weary eyes of men who have seen too much, the cautious glances exchanged between wary neighbors, the silent shadows of those who have already begun to lose hope. You catch sight of Tom nearby, his youthful optimism now tempered by the hard lessons this land has taught him. His steady gaze meets yours, a silent question passing between you: how many will see this through? How many will be swallowed by the merciless wilderness of greed and power? Plans begin to form, whispered talks of petitioning officials, of pooling resources to buy land cooperatively, of forging fragile alliances to withstand the mounting pressures. It becomes clear, survival here is no longer just about the gleam of gold. It's about community, about law, about learning to navigate the shifting currents of power and violence that have swept through this wild frontier. You wander back to your claim in the late afternoon, the silver vein gleaming faintly beneath rough quartz like a whispered promise in a world of uncertainty. You kneel, running your fingers over the cold, hard stone, thinking of the countless others who came before you, pioneers, dreamers, and survivors whose stories have been swallowed by the dust and time. You imagine the hopes and heartbreaks etched into every grain of dirt and flake of ore. Camp life beats on stubbornly around you, children's laughter bubbles like fragile springs near the tents, women exchange quiet words of comfort and courage, and the ever-present rhythm of survival pulses beneath the chaos like a heartbeat. The flicker of firelight dances on faces worn by hardship but etched with quiet resilience. Even the wilderness seems to hold its breath, the distant call of an owl mingling with rustling leaves and the faint howl of wolves far off in the dark. As the sun sets, the sky bleeds hues of bruised purples and soft pinks. Fires crackle and hiss, sending warm embers swirling into the cooling air. Shadows stretch long and mysterious, casting the camp in a flickering chiaroscuro of light and dark, a delicate balance of hope and fear, endurance and uncertainty. You settle beneath your canvas tent, the gentle flicker of firelight playing across the fabric above you. The day's tension unwinds slowly, replaced by a fragile calm that feels both precious and precarious. Outside, the night whispers its ancient secrets, and stars twinkle faintly through breaks in the clouds, distant, eternal witnesses to the human story unfolding below. Your thoughts drift back over the long journey, the struggles endured, the fleeting triumphs, the friendships forged and lost along the way. The gold rush, with all its wild dreams and harsh realities, is more than a tale of greed and gold. It's a testament to endurance, to courage, and to the unyielding flicker of hope that keeps the human spirit alive. Historians still debate the true legacy of this fevered time, whether it was a beacon of opportunity or a devastating upheaval that displaced native peoples, scarred the land, and fractured communities. But to you, it is deeply personal. It is a story of survival and the refusal to give up, no matter how heavy the odds. You draw a deep breath, the cool night air filling your lungs and steadying your restless heart. You have survived another day. And in this wild, relentless land, that might just be the greatest victory of all.